But James, not to let your last idea dangle. If you want to connect afterwards or later on today, and put together some ideas, or just do it. However you feel more comfortable. But I'd very much like to encourage and tap into some of that good juju on, creating some archives and having a curator of all of our data and milestones. You are clearly the man with a plan, so
sure, yeah.
that would be really, really awesome. I think because from a scalable perspective, I just see tons of opportunity for us to leverage what we've done, create some institutional knowledge, set a foundation for onboarding. That's your space. So if you got some ideas, let's put them to good use.
Great, yeah, happy to.
Dynamite. So with that, I mean, that's not a bad segue into talking about leveling, which is kind of the cornerstone of this conversation. So leveling, holy Toledo, it is really it's the engine, I think, at the end of the day that drives a lot of the platform. And so over the last, I guess, since Saturday, I don't know if you all were either online or saw the YouTube. If you haven't, check it out. Durham did a fantastic job of showing some of the high-level functionality. It's still an alpha. It's still very early, but you can see a lot of the promise. You can see where the technology team is going with it. So to Durham, Neil, and the technology guys, huge kudos. I think now it's incumbent upon the rest out with some deep thinking and some of the logic, some of the processing, some of the guts that need to go into this, just because they're not going to have all the bandwidth to do it. They're ultimately, their skill set is being able to implement and execute on what we can get down into. Leveling, I think, is one of those issues. So to really focus on the mechanisms of it, I was kind of hoping we could jumpstart or re-engage or collect and consolidate some of the ideas that have already been presented on Slack and some of the milestones. So that's kind of my preamble. Angela, James, you guys want to pick up or add some thoughts, right now, and then we can kind of figure out where we go next.
All right. Well, I've only kind of read through half the information that you sent to me, which those useful links. I wish I had a bit more time to read through, because there's lots of good ideas, obviously, that have been researched.
Yeah, there's some great ideas. I think the challenge is that they're all over the place. So I don't think we necessarily need to create anything new. I think there are some things we can improve upon, but if we can consolidate.
Yeah, I suppose maybe if we start by kind of chatting about what those ideas are, and then see if there's a couple extra solutions we might have to bring to the table.
Yeah.
Yeah. So which links are you talking about, Angela?
I can't remember what channel they were in, because there's not kind of a leveling. It must have been a micro-macro.
Yeah, they were scattered all over the place.
They were.
I
think
Micro-macro had some. There was the worker channel had some. There were some in general and meetings.
Yeah, I've got about 6 open on my tabs.
Yeah.
There's like yeah, I don't know where I got them, but I kind of just started filing them under my own bookmarks under crowd. Yeah, anyway, I started doing my own filing system, but maybe I can send the links through to you. Sorry, I can't see what the other fella's name is, and he's just a blue character. James?
James.
James, yes.
James. Okay, and James, what are you on Slack? Are you James on Slack?
Yep, I'm just James on Slack.
Oh, nice. James on Slack. Nice to meet you.
I think it was an indie hit back in the 80s. I think, yeah.
James on Slack.
James on
something or other, anyway.
Okay, so one of the things to help with consolidation or to help with the thought process is Allison and I, as you can see behind us, we tend to whiteboard a lot of the problems and solutions. And one of the things we arrived at with this particular problem is, because of its enormity, because of its criticality, and because there are a lot of different iterations on the theme, we were thinking that the optics that should shape or measure the conversation should be 3 concepts. One, scalability. I know Neil and the boys probably have some thoughts on using AI and some of the collective intelligence that we'll be creating, but are we going to create a system that is ultimately scalable? Is it timely? How up to date should this thing be? How dynamic or how static? Taking into account the technological technological burden, the data capturing, etc., as well as accuracy. As we're leveling folks, it is essentially our reputation. So when we go out and we present, let's say, me as a Python expert, whatever that may be as far as skills and experience and whatnot, we are aligning that with an expectation on the client side or the requester side. And if there's a failure there in execution or delivery or technical proficiency, that's, wow, you can't undo that. You don't get a second chance to make that first impression. So that's what I mean by accuracy. So by using those three criteria, and we can add more to them, we should be able to go through our lens. The reason I mention those things is that, as we go through the conversation, there tends to be a lot of, either some mentoring, some shadowing, some, a human element that is great in theory, but if we scale up to a certain size, holy Toledo, how does that effort then scale? So a lot of thinking that we can condense now into those three criteria, and if we come up with a solution that doesn't scale, well then we have to take a moment like, is that really a good solution? And so I wanted to throw that out there just to see if, as for some guidelines for our conversation, does that help without handcuffing?
Yeah, I think it does. So one thing I've been thinking a lot about in terms of, so we're talking about leveling for specific tasks or skills, basically, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're talking about self-leveling here, James?
No, well, I'm just going to so my thought has been, if you're leveling for, or you have a certain level for a particular skill, let's say, so we've already been good about saying Python rather than just programming.
Yeah.
But at a certain point, especially if that skill becomes widely used, there are going to be sort of sub-skills within that. And that's what I'm sort of afraid of causing problems, is that a requester could be looking for instance, a front-end designer, but if they hire someone with web design skills who's only done back-end, they're going to be very disappointed. And so I think there's also a tendency for fields to split over time and specialize.
Yeah.
So, and maybe the time it takes for that to happen will be long enough that we'll be able to address it as it starts occurring.
Yep.
But that's just been on my mind, is the idea of like, well, someone is perfectly qualified for the skill that they've gotten a certain level for, and it is appropriate, but the skill has actually diverged into two separate skills, and they're actually really qualified in the first one, and the requester wants the second one.
Yeah.
I think, does that come down to kind of, I mean, it's the same in any profession. My background's education and teacher training, and we've come across this same problem time and time again, because things in the field of education change all the time. People need retraining, depending on what government's in power, things change. So, I think I'll just pop on Slack a few of the ideas that I...
So Angela, as you're doing that, can I ask you a question? Because you're talking about a teacher that has the support of a union.
No, we don't really. Oh, well, are there unions? Yeah, I suppose there is a teacher union, but it's not like the States. I think. Okay. I don't know, to be honest with you.
Well, there's a structure there that's going to help with the training. I think the specialization dilemma is going to be with us. That's a fixture of the digital world in which we live in. It's a pretty digital challenge too.
With the union comment, do you mean that the union, or that, do you mean that somebody's forced to undergo training? Is that the kind of angle that you were?
Well, that you have a structure and organization then that obviously is going to, in the traditional world, the union's going to fight against that as much as possible. But then when the writing's on the wall, they also can consolidate resources, fast track training, and then ultimately, okay, if we're going to have to deal with this, then let's get the best training or the best whatever we need for our personnel, so now they can adjust accordingly. It strikes mostly to the training, development, and the learning that comes with the specialization component.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. I suppose I can see more ways that it can. The things, anyway, I posted in Slack the list of the things that we've used in training teachers, but it might be something that we want to consider. The first one is, well, no, sorry, the self-certifying obviously isn't a teacher one, but what I was thinking for the system is if they self-certify, then, well, things like certificates, whatever, as we all know, well, maybe we all know, as different people know, in the when somebody's hired, if they don't, and they might have the certificate, but they might not be able to do the job. So ultimately, it comes down to being able to demonstrate in some way. And I know that this is something that we've been talking about. So I'm not sure if something like training tasks could be offered where the people complete them, training that's not paid. So the platform offers some pay to expert requesters to evaluate the tasks. I know you're talking about scalability, but ultimately, I don't know. I think it might be able to work. I don't know. I think it was Scott Clemmer's HCI MOOC, and it wasn't the 2012 one. I think it was one in 2013 where we were evaluating peer observation or peer assessments, different peers' work, and we had to first of all fill out these training assignments, and I think it was like up to 7. Maybe it was because I was so bad. I think if there were very good HCI folks out there, they could just finish 3 assignments, trainee assignments, and then they would be on to the actual peer assignments. But for me, I think I was like 7, 8 of these training assignments for each of the peer, each of the assignments before I was allowed to go onto the peer to mark real peers assignments. And I was wondering, I mean, that was scalable. It was I don't know how many people took it, but it was thousands of people that took it. So I don't know if it might need a little bit more thought. Another thing that we've talked about before is the mentoring. So assigning, having some sort of mechanism within the platform where people would be paid to provide support in the form of time for mentoring. I don't know, look at how that might work. And also something that we used a lot in teacher training, and the thing that we found, I was a teacher trainer for a college that had 2 campuses and 3 outreach centers and lots of kind of work-based learning places. We had, I think, 1,200 full-time students, and I managed a group of, I think, about 45 full-time lecturers. And the thing that we found in developing their skills, the thing that we found that worked the best wasn't sending them, oh, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, wasn't sending them on a course or getting them to do writing activities or whatever. It was actually just sitting in the back of somebody else's class and observing them. Somebody who's good, actually, not somebody who is rubbish. No, that's not true, actually. Sitting them in a class with somebody who's rubbish also actually worked because they had a chance to reflect on the way that they would do things differently. So I was thinking within our system, I know doctors do this, nurses do this, there's some sort of an observation. Well, actually, even when I had kids, there was a whole room of people observing this one birthing experience, which I won't go into. But basically, at some point, I ticked a box saying I didn't mind if there was some trainees around. I think in my head, it was like earlier in the process when I was having an ultrasound, not actually on the day. But, my point is, in a lot of professions, we have people who observe the process from start to finish. So could it be that we ask requesters a tick box if they minded a trainee person to observe the process, and that person kind of not participate in any way, but just be privy to kind of the conversation that takes place and the work that gets done and the skill level, and then maybe after that offer a hand-holding experience where they either pay, maybe they have to pay to participate, with a worker that's experienced. So there's the trainee guy, or the guy who wants to be leveled at this certain level, working with an experienced worker, and this guy may be paying this guy a little bit, or whatever, however the mechanism works, and then having the experience to walk through and do the activity or do the task together in some way. I don't know, might be an option. And then also looking...
So the question for you is, are these experienced folks that are getting additional training, or are these cold starters? Are these new folks that you're now dropping into this experiential world?
Yeah, it could be either. Absolutely either. We've done. I mean, in teaching, we've done it with either. I worked. I led a team of advanced practitioners. So we had a program where we rewarded teachers who wanted to stay teaching and not move into management. So we had a system whereby we had a advanced practitioner status for our kind of super teachers. And now I've lost my train of thought. I forget what I was talking about.
You're talking about how it applies to old folks and new folks. The training.
Yeah. So I mean, so it was the same. Even with our advanced practitioners, we offered peer observations, because not everyone's an expert at everything, and even the experts at something are not experts. You know, there's always something that you can learn. So I think it applies to kind of absolute newbies to the system, as well as people who are experienced. And I think that might go some way towards, you know, say what James was saying earlier. If you've got one skill and kind of over time it kind of breaks up and it divides into kind of two skills, within a platform we'd have a mechanism to say, look, sorry, that skill's not really how it is anymore. We've got these two skills, so you might not need to do this little bit of mentored training to get you the badge to say you've got the two skills. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. Actually, and I was thinking regarding skills sort of subdividing, we could even have almost like a tree-like structure. So you, this is a little bit away from what you were just talking about, but if someone started off with Python as their skill, and then you know, time goes by, and eventually people are doing web development with Python, then you could have web development as a sort of a sub-branch of Python. So you have potentially, or maybe it's more of a network actually, because then you have your web development skills. You're familiar with all of these systems that you have to interact with through that, but then you also are doing it with Python specifically. So you could almost have, if you do something else with Python as well, like, what's another, like data, if you're doing sort of, what's that called, data science with Python, then you could have you could essentially create your Python skill level would be like the sum of your sort of constituent skills. So you'd have your web development skill with Python would be 3, and if your data science with Python is 2, then your overall Python skill could be 5, but that doesn't necessarily have as much meaning to a requester who wants a specific thing, but it does have some meaning, because they realize, okay, this guy's he or she does have 5 experience with Python. It might not actually be specifically with what I want, but at least I know that is sort of taken care of. You know, they might be banging their head against the wall with a specific problem, but at least they're aware, you know, they know the framework that they're working in.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a skills matrix.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Or that's kind of the vernacular we use in the recruiting world, and that may help us a little bit with. You know, one of the questions would be, how many levels should there be? Are we looking at 1 to 5, 1 to 10, with 10 being an expert? And so I wanted to shine on with you, Angela, that in the teaching world, how then is expertise defined? Is it 10? I know tenure is a huge component of it, but how then do you is it a self-defining? Is it, hey, everyone thinks Angela's an expert at this, so Angela's an expert at this, even if Angela isn't? Or are there some hard and soft skills that come into the process?
Well, there's a whole series of things. basic in colleges in the UK where I was working, there's no such thing as tenure. So basically, I can't remember what it is. It depends on every college's quality cycle, but ultimately there's a whole load of things that feed into the system. There's the like what do we call it? Like the job review? No, what do you call it when you get reviewed by your boss? 360 reviews is what we do. So basically, the manager of the department gives you some feedback. The people that you are mentoring or peer supporting give you feedback. Your contemporaries give you feedback based on peer observations. And also, what we made, because we never made them do anything really. We suggested that it might be a good way to improve their teaching. And ultimately, we used a lot of the student feedback and the data that we got from the students on the quality of teaching to inform kind of what level we reckon the teachers were at. And we also took into account other teachers, because we had a system where all the teachers engaged in peer observations quite regularly. So they'd give feedback to the teacher, and then they'd agree on kind of a score for the class. And so all sorts of things fed into it. So there was the reviews, the peer observations, the student assessments. So I suppose that would be the requester assessments, requester reviews, and also we did a lot of self-observation and self-feedback, like not feedback, but well, I suppose it was self-feedback. They had to kind of take videos of themselves teaching, go home, have a watch of the video, and give themselves a peer review. You know, and I think that was quite a powerful tool as well.
That's an interesting tool.
Yeah. Because when you step back from it and look at it from a kind of outsider's perspective, like you would look at another teacher, actually, in fact, people are quite a bit harder on themselves than they are on other teachers, to be honest with you. So,
okay.
I don't know. I think we might be able to have something like that in this system where people look at their own. Then you have to have some sort of matrix for evaluating their own work and in an objective.
I mean, that could be part of the training and learning concept. You know, it's that like, hey, I think I need these skills because, you know, I did this self-sorting, I did this self-guided 360, and I notice, wow, I'm not really as good a communicator as I thought, or I'm not as strong in this. I think that self-awareness, that's at the soul of what we're looking for. You know, we're looking at workers and requesters that can self-sort, that can self-govern, that can self-regulate, and that have that awareness that they know what they know, they know what they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Community.
What is it? What did Jay Silver put? The unconscious? No, what was it?
Yeah. When taken out of context, that expression really it can be very demeaning. But in place in the context of his matrix, it does make some sense that those are the people, you know what you know, you know what you don't know. But if you don't know what you don't know,
right,
then that self-awareness is something, you know, we have two options. We either help folks down that journey, or you got to sort them out. You've got to kick them out of the system, which is totally not what this is about. But those are the folks that can create the most damage to your reputation. And if we're creating a business enterprise, the rubber needs to hit the road. We have to be protective of that brand.
Yeah.
You know, and at some point it starts with the individuals. And so if we can give them those folks, but everyone that, you know, that safe harbor to acquire skills, that's a differentiator, because in most other worlds they probably get kicked out.
Yeah, not only that being a differentiator, but the kind of I was reading that one article by Palais that you put from, I've just got the link here, but they did some research basically in an online marketplace to test whether giving workers a chance to demonstrate their ability improves their labor market outcomes.
Yep.
And they put that giving the market more detailed information about their job performance. Oh, this is kind of a bit different, sorry. About their job performance, increase their average earnings and reservation wages. But ultimately, that's about giving them full information about what they're doing and what they're not doing, and them acting on it to improve their own skills. But there was something else that I read about Odesk inefficiently hiring or not hiring enough inexperienced workers. Does that ring a bell?
And that actually is, I think that's one of the questions that, I'm sorry, when I point over here, I have Slack off screen.
I forgot about Slack.
So Neil asked, and this has been a perpetual conversation, is how then do we integrate those and join the platform? But let's just take it to an extreme. They don't have any experience or experiences in the outside world that they can port over. There's not a resume of experience that we can build for them. So how then do we fold them into the big matrix? What pill do they take as far as the matrix goes? Like, how then do we ramp them up, certify their skills at a certain level? Would we be comfortable with creating an artificial environment for them? At a certain level, that they do some artificial tasks, or we create some training tools that are very real world, or actually to Angela's point, that newbies will shadow someone else, and that they can then ape off of those experiences to give them the first step of a leveling score. Is that moral? Is that ethical? Would we be okay with something like that?
Well, I think so. I don't know. I mean, if you think about not any other profession, but again, back to doctors, they've got the year, what is it? Well, it depends on what country you're in, but they have the year of, do they call it articling, where they're, well, I don't know very much about doctors. Why don't I stick to teachers? Yeah, work experience. So it's either paid or unpaid work experience. And for teachers, for example, I had to do a 6-week teaching, actually, where the teacher just sat at the back of the room and didn't do a single thing to help or assist me, but I had to do it. I didn't get paid for it. Then another 8-week one, and then I think a 3-month one for my undergrad. Yeah. And I think something like that I think it's not unrealistic to expect somebody to go through some sort of a training program for no pay. I wouldn't think.
James, in the librarian world, what any hard-earned experience?
Well, I guess the library jobs aren't really hard to find as long as you're willing to move to them.
Okay.
And that's sort of where the training, I mean, that's the conversation I had recently, is that, if you want to work at a really big, prestigious institution at the professional level and become sort of management position in one of those, you have to go and put in your time at a smaller school first. So that's, I mean, maybe it's not completely analogous, but there is this element of, proving yourself, definitely. And yeah, I think that's common. Yeah, that is common in a lot of fields. So if there's a way we could bake that into the system where, I don't know, maybe we could have tasks that are, or give the requester the option of basically opening their task to, well, you can spend, pay for the task at a premium and get the really high verified workers, high quality or whatever high level workers, or you have the option of not necessarily getting the best workers, but it doesn't cost you as much either, and there's this sort of risk that the requester is taking by doing that. I don't know. What are your thoughts on something like that?
Okay. Well, I mean,
it's a tricky one because go ahead. Go ahead,
Angela.
I was just thinking that that's a tricky one because ultimately the reputation of the platform is at stake, I would say, kind of.
Yeah, totally is. Yeah, I mean, let's not hedge against this. I mean, this as a commercial enterprise, Our ability to deliver on our promises is going to be tied to the workers that we assign a task or get or assume a task. And
Yeah,
so
I
if
think
they are a level, let's say they're a level 5 worker and we've established a criteria and some expectations and they can't deliver on that, then that's on us.
Yeah,
Right.
I think letting people loose. I'm just thinking about teaching again. Really, we wouldn't let a trainee teacher or even somebody who's been teaching in another kind of school system or anywhere, basically, anybody new to the college that I was at. There's no way that we kind of let them loose on teaching a class unless we had a full idea of what they were capable of, and they demonstrated that through teaching classes, through doing peer observations, doing. So there was a
Mhm.
series of these sorts of things I was talking about. So we had a clear idea of what they were capable of, and if they kind of fit with how we did things
Yeah.
in the college and kind of met the needs of the students and whether the students were happy or not. So I don't know. I mean, I was just thinking, there was a system that we had where we had some free classes where the teachers who were new could go and teach, and then we used those students to give us feedback.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So maybe, like you said before, there could be a part of the platform where something is offered for a lower price, but it's completely like this is a new person, it's a complete risk. If we had it completely, yeah, I don't know, yeah.
So Angela, my point to you might be this. You have a lot of experience in all this observational, evaluation, peer to peer, the skills, experience, student reviews, observational. I'm curious is can we automate any of that? Is there any way that either through technology where you do some parallel processing, people are watching this and they're going to be evaluating, assessing us. Is there a way in which we can bring that into the matrix? But are there
Yeah,
some ways in which,
no.
just from a scale perspective, we can automate or bring some technology to bear on some of these points? Because 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, that's 5 data points. I think that's a solid. You can rest your hat on that. That yeah, we have a really good handle. There's always going to be some mistakes, but based on this criteria, if you're a level 1, you're pretty thoroughly vetted. If you're a level 5, probably thoroughly vetted. So my inclination is that you're going to have the base is going to be huge with our level 1s, and how thorough do we need to vet those folks? And then as you get higher and higher in the pyramid, and you're claiming or we're going to assign you a higher level of expertise, we can probably move it is probably more critical and there'll be fewer of them, less of a scale issue. But if we're going on a level of 1 to 5, those 3 and belows,
Mhm.
one, do we need this detail, this level of rigor to assess and evaluate? I think you can go both ways. But because there's going to be so many folks in that pool, is there a technological solution, a tool, or a process that we can achieve this same sort of rigor but utilizing technology?
Hmm.
See, I don't know much about technology, so I can't really say what might be able to be done or not. But I'm just thinking back to Scott Clemmer's HCI class, and I imagine because he was training complete newbies. I mean, okay, lots of people who weren't newbies were taking the course as well, but something like the training tasks that he offered in the assignments that we did were presumably automated. I can't imagine somebody was sitting at the other end going, yes, yes, that's good, that's not good, whatever.
Mhm.
And ultimately, we passed that course or didn't pass the course or whatever the case may be. And then those people might have moved on and did a, I don't know, degree in HCI, whatever. So they brought them, they increased their own skills to be able to say they're level 5 HCI skilled guy, for example, or girl, as the case may be. And when they get to that level, I suppose there'd be a little bit more of observations, assessments, them doing tasks. I see what you mean. I think the lower the level, probably kind of just automated training tasks might do the job, but I suppose it depends on what the skill is ultimately.
Mm-hmm.
And it might be something that they produce is just something at the end, and then there is kind of a reviewer that kind of goes through and no, and sends them another training task. I'm not sure. What do you reckon?
I'm kind of thinking about also in terms of having really low-level tasks that you could automatically sort of measure that they're correct or not. I wonder if there will be a market, and this is of course dependent on the requesters needing this, but if there are plenty of requesters who essentially just want their workers to do a poll type thing, right?
Yeah.
So I wonder if there would ever be a market for a poll that is sort of dependent on technical skills. And if there was, that would be really useful, because then the requester already has sort of the ability to measure it, as basically if they're saying, okay, do this. Let me just lay out a scenario. So say a requester is trying to assess the skills of a particular group and like measure across age or something. So like Python skills across age, and they're doing a survey for this, and they do a random sampling of our platform. They could create questions that are like little simple measurements of like, okay, write a little 2 lines of code to do X, Y, or Z in Python. And so they'd be kind of killing 2 birds with 1 stone, where they're measuring the skills of our users, but then they're also getting their results for whatever study they're doing. This is, of course, a very useful scenario for us, because then we're benefiting from them being able to spit back and say, okay, this many people actually got it right. But I don't know, maybe there's a way for us to sort of build in a layer where requesters can sort of do these very basic automated things like that. I mean, I think that's basically what Angela was saying, right? Is like having an automated, or that's what we're discussing, right? It's like automated responses from requesters or from the platform that this is right or wrong.
Yeah. Well, my thoughts are, that for level 1s and 2s, we already have, or we can pull from Odesk or wherever, but I think there's a wealth of material that we could very rapidly onboard some newbies, provided that we define well what level 1 tasks are. And if it's, just like you said, if it's it's real simple, it's hit stuff, and I think that's well defined. That we can then onboard a variety of folks fairly quickly in that space, utilizing some automated tools. I think where it gets a little sticky then is, because there's a bunch of folks, there's probably folks that just want to do level 1 work. That's what they do. They're fine. They're on their phone. They can crank it out. Awesome. It's those folks that want to level up, that want to go that do level 1 work, that they're like, okay, I have ambition. I want to be a level 2, and I want to be a level 2 to get me to a level 3. How then do we assess, what do you need, or what do you do within a level 1 that makes you eligible to be a level 2? This identifying blue colors on Photoshop or whatever, that's just repetition. It's then identifying the skills that you need to do 1, skills you need to do 2, and then how do you acquire the skills as a 1, either through activity, through mentorship, or training, then that makes you eligible to move up.
Yeah, it should be a step system. People have
within
to move
the 1
through.
and 2, if we just stick to the micro tasks, I think that's one process, versus then you graduate from 3, 4, 5 where there's expertise. I think it actually becomes a little bit easier for us to graduate people through there, because the pool is smaller, which will allow us to have more of Angela's style human interaction to really vet out the skill set. But in the 1s and the 2s, you could have literally we can have thousands of people. So how, are we going? Is that the right approach?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, okay, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just Neil. What is Neil the math guy's real name? Is it Neil?
It's just Neil. Yeah.
Or it's not math guy. Okay.
Awesome.
So
I
Neil
think you
here
probably
has-
answer. Hey, you math guy. You might answer.
I want to see. I want to see Neil. Where's Neil? Oh, he's working.
He's like the Wizard of Oz. You never actually see the wizard.
Yeah, I was thinking about the Wizard of Oz earlier today, actually, when I was thinking about whether requesters should have the same amount of information on their dashboard as the workers. And then I was starting to think the Wizard of Oz a lot, but anyway, no, that's a different topic. So I was looking
Let's see your
at
shoes, Angela.
Pardon? What's that?
Let's see your shoes.
My shoes.
You have ruby slippers on? Oh, those are clothes.
My daughters, I promise.
Those were almost ruby slippers.
Look for some other shoes. Oh, just 1 second. I'm sorry, I just have to show you this.
So.
Is that close enough?
Oh, that's awesome.
God, I'll show you all the other rubbish on the floor here. Anyway, sorry. So Neil put this. I think it's is it balsamic? I don't know what he's made it in. It's lovely anyway. The next generation of crowdsourcing platform based on. Oh no, sorry. I'm just reading the top, and that's not the title of it. The lovely diagram that he's done here for.
Yeah. That thing is, it'll melt your face if you get too deep into it. But perhaps that is something we should discuss next time around, assuming we want to do this again.
Yeah, I think if he could walk us through it, that'd be good. Or maybe I'll have a look after.
Yeah, let's all look at it because there is a lot of detail in there, and it almost runs, I don't want to say contrary to the focus we're trying to bring, but what it does show is the consequences of our actions. And if we don't do it right here, the ripple effect can be pretty dramatic.
Right. Oh, sorry, Neil. I didn't look. Neil's not there, but I'm saying sorry because maybe he'll watch this. I'm sorry I haven't looked at this before. I know I pulled it up a few times to have a look at, but because there's normally 4 kids running around screaming, I just couldn't concentrate. But there's a lot of good information in here.
Yeah. So James, in your world, what defines expertise in the librarian world?
Well, what do you mean? Expertise as a librarian, or? Yeah,
or just in your world. I mean, how do you see expertise being conveyed to folks or acquired? Is it hard, soft skills? Is it perception? It's a new world, so I'll be curious to see how that plays out.
So one thing that actually there's been a lot of discussion about for academics is this metric. It's called the H-index.
Yep.
And it's kind of a measure of how impactful a researcher's work is. So I think a lot of researchers end up getting focused on the idea of having a very high H-index. They want to publish a lot and have their papers cited a lot. So that's one thing that someone would be considered an expert in whatever their field is. They can say what their field is themselves, and then you look at their H-index and you say, okay, this person is an expert because in that field, because they have a high H-index. But it's a little bit misleading because even someone who doesn't have a high H-index can still be very well read and have a lot of knowledge of the field and be an expert on it, even though they might have never published. So one thing I'm thinking is that it might be good to have multiple factors involved in creating whatever our level system ends up being. I think I think last week we talked about PageRank, and Trigva, are you still with us? It looks like you froze.
I'm still here.
Oh, okay. So I'm just what I'm thinking about is, it's always good to have one number that you can say, oh, this person's a 10 or a 5 or whatever.
It doesn't give you the full picture. Yeah, no,
It,
I
it
agree.
doesn't, right? So I'm thinking multiple factors, like or an ELO system. ELO is what they use for rating chess players. So I don't know specifically how we would go about ranking our users in terms of their skills one against the other. But if one way maybe to, if you have multiple workers who are working on a task at the same time, something we talked about is having a sort of redundancy so that you can compare to each other.
Okay.
So if you set, and 4 of them agree, and oh good, there's my webcam finally started working.
Ta ta ta.
Yes, hello. So if you have 6 workers, they all work on something. 6 of them agree. You could say that those 6 have sort of won, and their ELO goes up slightly, and then the 2 workers who have different answers to whatever this question is, their ELO would drop slightly because they're a little bit off point. So you could have sort of like an ELO system that measures. But then I also really like sort of to tie in with what Angela was saying earlier, having very strong experiences that a user has been through. That okay, this person did training with another user, or they've done this thing, whatever it is, that somehow makes them qualified, like passing their driver's license test. Like they've gone through the fire and they've survived, and so there they get a little badge for it, whatever it is. So I think
we just have to make sure there's lots of fires, so there's lots of things to measure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the more the merrier in some sense. I guess there's at a certain point there's too much, but
sorry, James.
I think a combination.
When
Yep.
the ELO system with the chess players kind of playing against each other, how would that work for ranking workers against each other, or ranking the workers against each other?
Well, I mean, it'd have to be hammered out, and I'm not even sure that that's really the best. ELO might not be the best way, but just off the top of my head, if you were to have multiple workers who are doing the same task, they could either, so I mentioned just then that if like 4 of them all agreed on what the task solution would be, then you just accept that as correct, and then the 2 workers who disagreed would lose ELO. But you could also do like tasks that are, I guess if it was a task that was correct or not correct, you could sort of maybe the task itself would you generate an ELO for the task, basically saying how difficult the task is, and then
the tasks that aren't measurable, like are not kind of good or not good, not a yes or no sort of thing.
Right. So those would be difficult. You might have to use a different system.
Yeah.
Right. It's interesting.
But on the macro level, I think that's interesting, James. Like, so this is a high degree of difficulty. This task is a 5 out of 5, and so that if those that can complete it, they've shown a proficiency in putting out that fire. They're good with level 5 fires. Is that kind of where you're intimating going down that route?
Yeah, sort of. And the other thing about ELO is that I think the way it ends up coming is like if you.
Oh, I've lost him.
He's frozen. Angela, are you frozen too? Blink.
Sort of the math behind. Okay, here we go. I hear you again, at least.
Yeah. That age with.
Yeah. So with with ELO, a very skilled person can still lose to an unskilled person. There's a very small chance, but it's possible.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of a nice idea as well, because even the most skilled person, a skilled worker at a particular task, can still come down with a fever in the middle of doing it and mess it up somehow, you know? Like, whatever it is, like, whatever happens, it's still possible that something does happen. So ELO might capture that well, but I'm sure there are other systems as well that are even better. But yeah, so setting a task is like, oh, this is a high ELO task. I don't really know if that would make sense. We'd have to talk to maybe someone who's more experienced in this, but yeah.
Okay. So we're on an hour here, so this tends to be where conversations then start to degradate out. So it's not what we've done because we've moved the needle on some things. As far as next steps go, we've made some references to like learning trees and networks and matrices and the like. Maybe as a next step here, if you'd like, I can cobble together, because this is kind of in my world in the recruiting space where you have skills matrix. Maybe dummy one out a little bit for Python, and then you chew on that a little bit, and then see if we can apply some of our learnings and some of our concepts to them, and see how they would work. Just kind of do like a mini prototype on a prototype, just to see if the peer-to-peer review, the skills, experiences, and the like, just moving a Python person through from 1 to 5, how that would work, and to see if it exposes some of the strengths and weaknesses with regards to scale, timeliness, and accuracy.
Right.
That's something that might help us.
I've got one big question. Oh, are you guys there?
I can hear you. It's kind of breaking up a little bit.
I might have lost.
Oh, we're here.
We can hear you.
Okay, sorry. One big question I've come across this week is with work on Freelancer, anyways, is that there are quite a few profiles that are not individuals. They're groups of workers or a employer with sub-workers. So how will we? What mechanisms do you reckon? I mean, it's a whole discussion in its own. I think is what mechanisms will be in place to ensure that one profile is one individual, and that these individuals are going through this process rather than a collective. And if a lot of these platforms, like Odesk, I don't know anything about Odesk or MTurk or anything, but if there are a lot of profiles that are actually collectives working, then should we be looking at how this platform could allow for that in some way? Because if it's something that people need and want and are doing, perhaps we need to look at ways that the system could support that sort of thing, and also to ensure that the kind of integrity of a profile and this leveling isn't compromised.
Yeah, I gotta admit that's I haven't considered that, so that's new thinking for me. Certainly a fascinating concept. If there are groups out there that are looking to crowdsource within crowdsource.
There's a lot, I think, from the sounds of it. I mean, I've only been doing a little bit of research in this area. It's only been a month now, I think. But it sounds like it happens. I don't know on what scale. But the thing that got me thinking that it happened quite a bit was on Freelancer, the profile pictures. There were some individual profile pictures, some anonymous ones, and then some that just looked like company logos in a way. And then it got me thinking. And then I had this conversation with, I don't know if you saw my post on Slack. Earlier today, I had all these questions, so I contacted a fella on Freelancer who did previous logo work for me, and I asked him if I could pay him $10 to ask him 10 questions just quickly, and he said, yeah, no problem. So I sent him a list of questions, but I did this while I was making dinner and feeding the kids. So the questions, sorry, they're not very good questions, and they're actually very leading questions, but I asked him a series of questions, and he gave me some kind of just really quick answers. He made a quick $10. Took him a couple minutes, and yeah, no, it was interesting. He does, because I had this question about whether people work in a collective, and he said he's come across it before, but I don't know if we can find any more research on. Does anybody have any statistics of this kind of collective people working behind a profile? So it's.
certainly, if there's some curiosity there, I think that's, we certainly have a lot here to deal with. I don't know if that's an outlier, but to your point, a little more research is probably required to see if that's the case. So I think just as we're delving into this, not only should we look at the newbies as being, a very specific criteria, we should also look then at maybe the potential that there is some, some group work that's being done here and see what sort of impact that has on what we're looking to do.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too when you think about integrating some sort of calendar type functionality. Where I mean, that's what one thing that this fella had mentioned he would like, and I would like it as well because I'm not able to be on the platform all the time and it causes some problems. But something like that would definitely show whether there was a collective working, because if they're on 24/7 all the time, then we know that they're not just one person, one profile, and one person moving through this leveling system. And there is an issue there, though, because if they've kind of worked their way through the leveling system to get the level 5 Python programmer badge or level allocated to him, then what does that mean if he's got somebody who's working for him that's just new, who's level 1? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, some food for thought.
I mean, it definitely speaks to the authentication issue, which applies not only to leveling but to the work itself. Are you actually the person doing the work? I know, like on Coursera, if you do any of their courses, it's certified. Anytime you're actually doing the homework, you have to. They take sort of your typing profile, and so you have to type in the same sentence every time, and they take a picture from your webcam so they know that it's you every time you're doing an exam or homework or something.
Well, it is funny. You mentioned that because I did that twice today because I had to finish 2 assignments. When I was doing them, I thought, what is there to stop somebody who's working in a collective to get MOOC certificates? John here, Joe there, Jim there, and Jane there, all working together. John does my assignment. He just pops over and he says, "Right, I've done your assignment. Just do your typing, get it over with, get your photo taken." What's to stop that from happening? I know we signed a photo.
People are going to go to that great lengths.
Well,
awesome.
Well, listen, I mean, whatever system you have, I mean, there's always going to be somebody who can break the system. Nothing is ever 100% secure. I don't know that is something we need to worry about just yet.
No, ultimately, that's not something that we need to worry about, because ultimately we're not basing it on which certificates do you have. Come on, you've got your certificate, welcome to our platform. It's based on the skills that they demonstrate. So something like linking to other profiles or other platforms like GitHub or LinkedIn or whatever. I know we haven't had much discussion about that yet, but maybe something like that would.
So how about we do this then? Angela, if you've got some time, why don't you dig a little bit more into that? James, I know you were talking a little bit about ELO, but if there are some, to continue to do a deeper dive into maybe some parallel assessments or just some logics or methodologies about defining expertise, and bring a little more flavor into that. And then I'll build, like I said, I'll build a little skills matrix that we can experiment with next time we meet, if you guys are so inclined, perhaps later in the week, that we can start test driving and applying some deeper logic to this. And so I'll try to share that with you by the middle of the week, and that'll just give us a template that we can start. Instead of dealing with the hypotheticals, we can deal with something that's fairly real that we can then apply a little bit of rigor to. And we can deal with, address expertise and leveling of a variety of different mechanisms, newbies, experienced, and the like.
Yeah.
And looking at things, whether they're scalable or not, that's the big question, I suppose.
Yeah.
Ultimately.
And that's why I'll do the matrix to go from 1 to 5, just random. It seems to be the numerology that works well, and then break it down in a way like I'll take some of that into account, throw a couple boogeymen into the mix as well, some tough questions, and we'll fire that off and let's see what we can come up with.
Sounds good. Well done.
Great.
Awesome.
Do Do you
James,
guys
good to
ever,
put a
like,
face with a
eat,
name, so thank
sleep?
you for joining. Angela, thank you for being awake.
Yeah, oh, I'm always awake this late. This is no problem. This is a good time. Everyone's asleep. It's my relaxing time where I do my fun stuff like this.
James, is this a good time for you?
Oh yeah, this is fine. Or the evening meetings are good too. The ones I think they were around 10:30
Yep.
Yeah.
Eastern time. Those are
good
fine.
for me too.
There's also been some recommendations for us to do a 3 o'clock in the morning call.
That might be difficult, but that's okay. I can always catch up online or on YouTube.
Yeah. I'm not sure. Okay. Well, thanks everyone. Any closing thoughts that we want to leave with?
Perhaps, yeah, just one. Maybe we could gather those links that we put in various places and get them to James. I'll copy the ones that I have open on my browser at the minute, and we'll try and get those to James.
The literature link
Sure.
on the leveling wiki.
Yeah, we are building a wiki as we speak for leveling. So there is a resource tab there. So as soon as I put it live, I'll send you guys some links. You can edit
Does
it.
that mean there's going to be a leveling channel, or is that going to go under
It
micro
could.
macro?
We could if you like. I think James, that's to your point as far as managing data and flow. There's some advantages to having a leveling channel within Slack?
We'd want to make sure there's enough interest in it being a separate. I mean, right now, what would it be under micro macro maybe?
Yeah, I think leave it under micro macro, or we'll lose people.
Okay.
Yeah. Once it's got
links to-
enough momentum to split off, we can do that. But that's something that comes up.
Yeah, it's a little micro macro. It's a little reputation. It's kind of the hybrid of the two. But the wiki is just a good static place to drop content that you want considered and reviewed.
Yeah. So we'll share that on over, and since this is a little bit rock and roll, a little bit country, let's keep it in the. Where do I keep it in the worker profile space?
I forgot what you said. The what?
Oh yeah.
I was caught up in rock and roll and
yeah.
country.
I'm sorry. Let's just keep it in the macro and the micro channel.
Yeah. Good.
And then if we get critical mass, or the micro macro folks are saying, "What in the heck are you guys doing here?" Then we'll take our toys and leave.
Sounds good.
Sure.
You can take these toys as well.
We got a ton here. We're sweet.
If I took a screenshot of my floor right now.
All right.
Anyway.
Well then, everyone, thanks for the time, the thought, the conversation. Very stimulating. Who needs coffee when you can have chatter? It's awesome.
Right.
So thanks, everyone.
Okay. Have a great
Thanks,
rest of your
guys.
day or night.
Cheers.
Okay, thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Guys.